Like I said earlier, that I would like to show us the assignment for today, like for this week, and it is to build a simple calculator. As you can see on the screen, and it will look like what I want to show us now. Do we use all what we have been learning so far? We will use HTML, CSS, and the JavaScript. Just a simple. Like I said earlier, that I would like to show us the assignment for today, like for this week, and it is to build a simple calculator. As you can see on the screen, and it will look like what I want to show us now. Do we use all what we have been learning so far? We will use HTML, CSS, and the JavaScript. Just a simple calculator that can divide, multiply, subtract, add percentage to, the percentage, and if the number is negative or positive, and if there is dots, like 2.3 multiplied by 2 should be 4.6, right? So, and you can use the C key to bring it back to 0. So you can always Google, and you can always share any of your challenge on Slack, so that we can help you out. And if you want to go through more exercises, I will advise that you go to W3 resource. Just Google W3 resource. Can you see my screen, and can you still hear me?
Yeah, we can see and hear you.
All right. So just Google W3, click on it, and look for JavaScript exercises. Is loading now. So as you can see here, they have exercises with online editor, so you can practice HTML, CSS here, and JavaScript. That's what we have worked on so far. Let me just click on JavaScript so that you will see how it looks like. So this is it, and you have solutions. Let me click loops now. Let me click on conditional statements and loops. We have talked on this one last week. Since my network is almost slow. So you will see different exercises here. And you can see the solutions to it as well. Okay, it's loading now. So here you are to write a JavaScript program that accepts two integers and display the larger. So you can also make use of their solution as well. So let's continue into today's class. The first thing that we will talk about today is variable scope. Before we continue our loop, let's quickly talk about variable scope in JavaScript. So scope determines the visibility and accessibility of a variable. It means that if we declare a variable, there is a region in which that variable will be visible and accessible. So we have three scopes in JavaScript, which is the global scope. This one can be accessed everywhere in the script. Let's just practicalize that. We will continue with this. Let's say I declare variable a to be 10. Now this variable a, we can get access to it anywhere in this script.js file, which means if I write a function let's say a function to add numbers, let's say let x equals to 5, then and I say sum equals to x plus a. Now return sum. As you can see that I didn't declare variable inside this block of code, inside the function, but I can have access to it since it is declared outside it as a global variable. So let me console.log this and let us see the answer. So let me quickly run this with live server. I hope you can still alright. So let us inspect it now and see. Let's click on the console. So as you can see that it is running line 59 and it is 15. So but if I declare a here, now a will take the value that I declare inside this function. Let's say I make it to be 15. If I save this and I do it, so let me just put it side by side. You see that a will now be 20, but if I didn't declare a here, it will take the value of the global variable. Now let's move to the second type, which is the local scope. Now the variables that you declare inside a function are local to the function and they are called local variables, which means that as I've declared x here on this line 53, if I try to access it outside of this function, we see that I will not have access to it. So let me just console.log x. Let me comment this one out. As you can see that it is saying that for line 58 that x is not defined. So the scope of x is within this function, and since it is not a global variable like this I cannot access it somewhere else. Let's say I have another function now. Let's say function to subtract numbers. Now if I declare x here, okay, let me first of all do this one. Let I equals to 12. Let j be equals to 5. Now I can return I minus j. So if I call on this, it will return 7. But let's say I want to try and access this x here. You will see that it will not work since x is not a global variable. So as you can see, it is saying x is not defined, but I can access a here since it is a global variable, and this is why I can also come here and declare a here and declare b here, since I know that this function subnum does not have access to the variables in addnum, so I can use the same name. It will not affect them. I can use the same name. A means 12 here and B means 5 here. So this the scope of A and B here, it is limited to this subnum. Why for the addnum, A and B can only be accessed inside this addnum. I hope we understand.
Yes.
Alright, so let's move to the last one, which is the okay, let me just use this one. There's something that I will like us to get here as well. So let me comment on this one now. Now, looking at this function, we have function bar, and outside we declare y to be 20, and inside there we made y to be 200. I have already explained that one, that it will take the value of the one inside this local scope. Now there is another function bars inside function bar. Now for this function bar, if there is no y declared there, the first thing that first thing that this function will do is to check outside itself. We can say that this function bars is a child of this function bar. So function bar is like a parent to this. So what it will do, if it is saying y and it is not being declared here, it will first of all check the parents. If it has y, then it will make use of it. Before it now check the global scope, the first thing it will check is the parent scope. If it has it, then it will make use of it. As you can see that it is bringing out 200, but let's say this one is out of it, then it will give me 20 because it comes inside here and it is not saying y. Then it now goes outside of this scope to the global scope and it finds y to be 20, so it will give me that y. But if I've declared y here, let's say it should be 10, and even if I make this y to be 200, you see that it will give me 10. Sorry, I need to, yes, it will give me 10. I can still say let y, so it will give me value 10. Now let's move to the last one, which is the block scope, which started from year 6, which is year 2015. Now year 6 provides the let and const keywords that allow you to declare variables in block scope. So whenever you see this curly braces, it is a block. Whether the if, the switch, then the loops, or the for loop, while loop, and all those loops, they have this curly braces. So the let and const keywords allow you to declare variables in block scope. So let me quickly explain that. So before year 6, there's what we call var. I only talked of let and const because that is the okay. If I'm using const, then I need to give it value right away. So before year 6, we have what we call var, but because of the complication of this var variable, that is why we will be sticking to this let and const. So let me use var z to be equals to, let's say 10. Let me give this one value of 9. So let me use the if block here. So let me just put through here, because this condition will only run if this thing is true. If it is false, it will not run. So if true, let's say console.log x plus y. Let me use if true, let I equals to 2. So I can use console.log I plus 1. As we have already said, that this y, since it is not inside this block of code, it will look for it outside there. Let me use while loop for this. Let me use while loop. So let's say while z let's say yx is less than 20, console.log x. But inside there I want to say var j equals to 10. Now me using var here, it has made this thing it will make it like a global scope, but I ought to access this j only in this block. But making use of var, it will make it a global scope in such a way that if I try to console.log var here, console.log j, hope you can still see my screen.
Yes.
Alright. This thing is not loading fast. So what I'm trying to say is that with var, the variable will be accessed outside of this scope, but if I use let or const, it will only be accessible inside this block of code. So that is what this line is trying to tell us, and that is why I didn't even introduce us to var from the onset. So let me just comment out this one, and let's move to the do while loop. So we did the while loop last class. Now for the do while loop, let me show us the format that it will take. It is just like the while loop, but it will first of all run the block of code before the condition. That is just the difference. Now for the while loop, the first thing is the while, then it will now take the expression, then the block of code that we want to run. But for the do while, it will first of all run that block of code, if you run the block of code, do this one while the condition is true. The first thing is to do, then the block of code that it will run, then the condition. So let's practicalize that. I need to check from time to time if you can hear me, so that I will know that I'm still on. So the first thing is do, then the block of code, then the condition. That is why this one is called do while. So let's make use of what we used last week. We will run that same one, but now with the do while loop. So, and if you are using VS Code, you can just type do and go to do while, so that it will generate the template for you. But it is always good to type it as a beginner, so that it will stick. Now so we want this thing to console.log j. I just want to make use of this so that you will see the similarity between while loop and do while loop, while this condition is true. So let me close this one, and because it has been loading since, let me just let me just copy part and paste. So so we want it to print from 1 to 10. Let me just reduce this one to 5 so that I can comment this while loop and you will see the differences. Now as you can see that I am using J here and making use of J here, linking it with the global scope that we just talked of. Since J is global, I can have access to it inside any block of code or function. So let me first of all comment this one out and run it. So it will do from 1 to 4. Now let's see what do while we do. It will still do from 1 to 4, but the only difference here is that it will first of all do the first one before checking the condition. Now even if the condition is not true, it will first of all print the first one. Unlike while loop, if it is not true, it will not run. So that is the major difference between the two. So we should note it. We should note the difference so that we will know the one that we really want to make use of, because there are some things that we do that it is the do while that you want to use, but in some it is the while. If you want the first one to run without checking the code first, whether it is true or false, then you make use of the do. But if it must work with the condition, then you make use of the while. So let's move to the next thing on our agenda for today. Now I would like to quickly, I don't know if we have been able to solve the questions. Anybody?
For me, I've not been able to solve it. But I've not worked on it actually. So
Okay. What I actually want to do now is to solve 1 and 2b and 4 for us, so that I can quickly mention some things that I skipped. So let's start with number 4. This is the task. Now for number 4, we have to write the code below using the if else, which would correspond to the following switch. Now as we know that switch is just to make if readable, if else is still the same thing as switch, but the more readable way is the switch. So let me just paste this one here. Now we are to rewrite this as if else. The first thing to note is that this is the condition. So I will just write if, then put this condition here. If this now the first case is edge, so I will say if browser is equals to edge, then it should alert me this. Control C. Then the next thing is else. But since I'm seeing another case here, I know that there's another if. So else if we are still checking the browser, is equals to Chrome. Now we need to note something here, that I said last class that we should always make use of this break, but here they want to join these four together before the break. So if you have such things just like this, all the code from here to here will run. It is until it sees this break that it will come out of all these cases. So what they are trying to do here is that if Chrome, like if browser is equals to Chrome, or browser now notice that I'm using the 3 equals to sign, which we check for the sameness and the data type. Let me just copy it. So else if browser equals to Chrome, or browser equals to Firefox, or so that is what they want to check here, and we are going to run the 2 to see. And the last one is Opera. So if any of these cases are true, then it will run this block of code. So, and what we want it to run is alert. Okay, we support these browsers too. Then default means else, only else. Whenever you see default in switch, in if, it means else. Like if you have run all this, then if none of it is true, then you can make use of else. So let us run this and see. I will close my console now because we are not using console.log, we are using alert. So let me save now and refresh my browser. Sorry, let me comment out this one. It will not see the browser. So let me now reload. This is how alert works. Okay, we support these browsers too, which means that one of it is true, which is this Chrome. I hope you understand. Do we get this?
Yes.
Alright, so what I wanted to bring out to us is this all with the case here, which I didn't talk of, like if you want to join more than one case together before the break. So that is how we do that one. Now let me do 2b as well. So for this 2b, I will only use for loop. So you can now use while loop and function. So we have to generate even numbers up to 1000. So there's something that I skipped that I will want us to see now, which is using continue and break inside the for loop. I'm commenting all these out so that in case we want to make use of it, I will send a file to us. Now we know that even numbers are numbers that are divisible by 2 only. So for the for, the first thing is to declare a variable. Let me just say even equals to 1. So the next thing is the condition, and I said we should print up to 1000, but I will make this one to be 10. Okay, let me make it 20 because of our time, so that I'm not going to be wasting time. Now the next thing is the condition. Now if even modulo 2 is equal to 0, then console.log even and continue. So we have what we call continue. We have already talked about break, but I want us to see it in the light of loops. So if I refresh this one now and I check my console, as you can see that this is creating from 1. Let's say I want it to reach 20, I can put equals to sign there. So it will print from 2 to 20. Continue is it is just as if we want to skip a value inside this our loop. So it will first of all come here for 1. Okay, let me just start with 2 so that we will not waste our time. Now for this 2, it will check if 2 is less than 20, which is true. Then it will now come inside this inside the block. Now we now say that if even, which is 2 now, modulo 2 is equal to 0, then it should console.log it and continue, which means that skip skip the skip the next loop, skip the next um skip the next iteration. So 2 divided by 2 is like the remainder of this, it will actually be 0. Then it will console.log this are 2. Then continue means it should skip the next one. So it will not print all the 3, 5 and so on. But if we want to make use of break, now I can say, let me just read this console.log out. Now if even, let me say if even is equals to 5, sorry, let me say 10, that means what I want is that if this loop reach 10, just come out of it no matter this condition here. So break will always break that loop and take you to the next line of code. So let us run this one and see how it works so that we will understand. As you can see that it didn't print up to 20. I just say it should console.log what is coming from here. Now if what is coming is equivalent to 10, then break out of this for loop. So that is why it stopped there and it break out of this for loop. I hope we understand. The concept of break and continue. Now let's do number 1 task. So we have to use function expression, function declaration and arrow function. I hope we understand what I meant by function expression, function declaration and arrow function here. Can you
No,
still
please
hear?
explain. Hello? Can you make the distinction, please?
Okay, so I'll just do I'll just do that one now. So what we have to do is to write a function minimum which returns the list of two numbers. So I'll just do for another one for us so that we will do this one by ourselves. So what I will do now is function max. So you still be the one to do the function minimum. So what I mean by function expression is this. Now I told you that we have 3 ways we can declare functions, which is the function expression with the function keyword followed by the name, then this parentheses, then this. This is what I mean by function expression. Now the second way is the declarative way, like saying, let me use const now. Const max, let me comment this one. Const max equals to, then you will now write the function keyword, but it will not now have name. This one will serve as our name now, so followed by the parentheses, then followed by this. And the third one is the arrow function. So that is what I mean by all those three. So which is const max equals to, then the next thing is the parentheses that will contain our parameters, and then the equals to and the arrow key and the block of code that we want to run. And if it is just only one statement, then you don't need this. This will automatically tell JavaScript to return the statements that we are trying to make. Let me do a comma b here. So that is what I mean by function expression, declaration, and this. So for function max, so I want to write a function that check for the maximum number. So I can say if a is greater than b, then return a. So let's now console.log return a is, so if I want to add a variable with a string, this is how I will do it. A is the maximum number. But now in year 6, we have the template literals to help us out. So instead of me making use of plus, I will just use the template literal, which is the backtick. Then for the variable that I want to show, I will make use of this dollar sign and the braces to tell JavaScript that the value here is not a string, it is a variable. So return a is the maximum number. Let me console.log it so that we will see. Hope you still remember how we normally call our function. You call it by the name and you input your variable. Let's say 9, 2. So if I refresh, That's all now. You see that 9 is the maximum number. So if you check these two and give me the maximum number, let's say I put 2 here and I put 9 here. As you can see, it is giving us undefined. Reason being that it will return an empty, since it is not true, what will be here will be empty. In fact, it will not even run this block of code. So right here we know that we need an else statement. So else return, let me just duplicate it, else return this is the largest number. So if I save and run it now, we now have a complete row. I hope you can still hear me.
Yes, I hear you.
So we will do the remaining by ourselves, and I hope we still remember how we can convert this to the third way I asked us to do it, the ternary, using the ternary operator. So all you need to do if you want to use a ternary operator instead of this else if, just copy this one and put a question mark. Then the next thing is the code it will return if that is true, else the code is will run if that is false. So we can just we can return this one. So we can just put return here, or we do const c, then you can now return your c. So you will now return c. It will still work the same way. Note that we are using ternary operator now. So let's save and let me refresh. You see, it will still give us the same thing. So I hope we have been able to understand that one better now. So let me comment it out. So let's continue our work now. So we are moving to DOM now. I will like us to see DOM as a standard for how we can get, change, add or delete HTML elements. So DOM deals majorly with HTML elements, like any element that you can see here. So like I said that the HTML DOM is a standard for how to get, change, add or delete HTML elements. So we can add style to our elements, making use of JavaScript, and our browser's interface to change what is displayed on the screen. That is what DOM is. DOM is our browser's interface to change what is displayed on the screen. So API means application programming interface. Just like the name is, it is an interface between two things, which is between the let me just use front end and back end as an instance now. So if you write a code that you will need to have that you will need to have access to before you can reach an application, that code is the interface. So it serves as a mediator between two applications. So now for every browser, it has its own API, which is what JavaScript communicates with. So let us see this picture so that we will understand what I'm trying to say. So this is it. Now let us note that the HTML document maps to a series of DOM nodes that we can manipulate. So this here is the image. Now if we write our code this way, this is what we can see from the front end now. This is what I can see. This is what I am writing here. But at the background, like with the browser's API, it will turn this to something like this, which is what we call the DOM. So it will always start with document, then the next thing is the HTML, then the head and the bo- body, then just with the hierarchy. Like now, it will always start with this document, then the next thing is the parent element, which is HTML, then the sub one, which is the head and the body. As you can see that this head and the body, they are on the same line. So this one will be another node, this head and this body will be two nodes, like there will be node under this HTML. Then under this head we have what we call title. So under head there will be a title node. So inside this title tag we have the my HTML document. Now let's move to body. So under body we have h1, we have div, and we have another div, which is the the direct child of this body here. So as you can see, h1, then the div with the id of div1, then the div with the id of div2. So under this h1 eh, we have the heading, though it is not here, but we should know that we have it here. Then under the div, this first div, we have the div the p tag, which will form another node. Then the value inside this is p tag 1. Then under the div id with div 2, so we have the p with the class p2, and the con ten t inside this is p tag 2. So any HTML page that we write, it will always transform to this at the background, though we will not see it, but it will always transform to this. So this is what JavaScript will now interact with, and that is why I said earlier on during our first class that we should always give a unique ID to every ID that we give. Like now on this page, on this index.html page, it has to be unique. I hope we understand that part before we start
Yes,
practicalizing.
yes, yes.
So let's now start to work on it. So let me just cut this one and give this one ID of test. Of test. So I've now come inside my script tab. Let me refresh this page so that you see. So as I said that the first thing is document. So we can type document dot get element by ID. So we have different inbuilt functions that we can make use of. The first one that I will talk about is this get element by ID. So since it is a since a function, the normal way that we normally call a function is with the parenthesis. So now you now go and look for the name of the value of this id, which is text. So you will now put text here. Now that's content that I cut from here, I want to put it back there, but now with JavaScript. So there's what we call dot text content equals to, now let me paste it here. So let me save now and refresh. As you can see that this is saying welcome to JavaScript class, but if you come here it is not there, but you have already used JavaScript to handle it. So I would just like you follow follow what I'm doing. You will definitely get it by practice. So but before text this text content, what we normally make use of is dot inner html. So it will still do the same thing. Let me save now and run it. So as you can see that it is doing the same thing, but it is better with this text content. So we can have multiple things on this page with different, let's say I have another p-type here. Let's say I have div here. Now if I want to get, let us note that we can also make use of, here I made use of get element by id, which is this id. Let's say it is class. Let's say I give this one class. Class test2. So there's still a way we can get it as well. And let me put id here as well. So let me just make this one to be id of div. Now I can get this one too by class name, but watch how I'm going to get it. Now the first thing, as I said, with the document, that is our first note. Then we now make use of get elements by class name. As you can see that for this by id, there's no s after the element, meaning that all our id should be unique. But as you know that we can have multiple class names, so that's why they use get elements by class name. So since it is a function, the next thing is the parenthesis, then the class name, which is test2. text content. So let it be equals to, let me just use something. Let me see. So we can make use of anything. So let me refresh. Now we should note that it will always take a string. So I already thought of this template later. In fact, inside of all this, I can even just make this one to be plus. Wait, let me just try something first. Okay, let me try dot inner HTML. So let me save this now. Something is wrong. Let me check my console. Okay, the saying no. Okay, so I will come back to this when we want to add color to our page. But let me quickly talk about the query selector. I want to use this one. So instead of get instead of using dot get element by id, by class, by all those, we have what we call query selector. Document dot query, as you can see, it is bring, bringing it out. So the next thing is the parenthesis. Since this is a function, so now for this query selector, we need to denote it the way we normally denote id and class in css. As we know that for id we denote it by the hash symbol, but for the class it is the dot symbol. So I want to select that div. Since it is id, I will type hash, then followed by the id name, the value that I give to it. I hope you can still see my screen.
Yes.
Yes.
Very good. So dot I still use the text content. So this is a, a element. So let me just save this and let's refresh our browser and see. This is a div element. So we can make use of this and we can make use of this. But there's even something now that if you are using ID, you can actually call the name directly. So instead of making use of query selector or get element, I can say div. So it will still give me the same thing, but let us try and make use of either this get element by ID or query selector. So let me come back to this. So let me just duplicate this one. Let me type this is a paragraph. This is a paragraph. Now notice that they have the same class name. So now let me quickly reframe this one so that we don't get confused. We can also first of all declare the variable. So let me just cut this one. We can first of all declare it with the const or let keyword. So I can say let test equals to test, then equals to document dot get element by ID. Then I can now make use of this variable name test. Then let me paste what else. So I can now say test dot text content or inner HTML. Even doesn't really much. So let me do the same thing for this as well. Let me say const div equals to document dot query selector this. Then I will now call the name of the variable dot text content. Let the content be equals to this. So it is just like me calling this putting it inside this variable. So anywhere in my code I can now call this div and apply whatsoever I want to I apply there. So let's now come back to this class name. So let me make use of the same thing. I can say const test2. Since test2 is the name, you can say document dot get elements by class name, and the class name is this. Let me just so I can now say test2. Now let me console.log this so that you will see what it is getting for us. Console.log test2. So let me actually start from this. So we will see the value of our test. So let me save and run it and open the console now. Inspect. So we are expecting line 164. As you can see that it has grabbed this h1 element with the test I with the test id. So we can now manipulate this h1. Now let's see what test2 will bring out for us. Let me save and refresh. Now it is bringing an array for us. So we will still need to follow this because the next thing that we will treat is arrays and objects. So but just try and follow me so that by the time we now get to array, you will understand what we are trying to do here. Now this thing brings out an array of all the elements with the class name test2. Now there's a way we can get just a single element out of this array of two elements. So it is by saying this way. So let me save and let us see. As you can see that it has now grabbed only one of it. Before it is giving me the two, but I just want one of it. Now if I want the second one, I will change this one to one. So I will talk more on this when we get to the array. So let's say I just want to change only the first one. So this is what I will do. I will type test2. I want the first one, so I will grab it this way. Then I can now say dot text content. I don't want the content that is there. I want the first content to be first. So we see that this one will now work. Control S. So let me close this console and refresh this. As you can see that it has now changed to first. So maybe I should comment these ones out so that I believe you can see I believe you can see it now. What is here before is this is a paragraph, but now I can now change it. Now if I want to use query selector for this one, for this get elements by class name, there is a way I will go about this. So I want to use query selector. We have what we call query selector all. So it will select for all the classes, but don't forget that with the query selector we need to make use of the dot sign for the class, and if it is the id, we will make use of this hash sign. So let me control dot log it. Let me comment this one now. So you see that it will still bring out the same thing. Let me save and refresh. Let us inspect and see our console. As you can see, this is it. It will bring it out now. Even if it is more than, if it is more than two, let's say we have four. Now you see that this one will change to four. I hope you can still see my screen.
Yes, ma.
All right. So it has now changed to 4 0 1 2 3. So 1 2 3 4. So we can now pick the first one and change it. Please let us follow this because this is what we are going to use for the assignment. Test 2, I want the first content to be first. So let's say I want to change all the four content. So this one will be one, this one will be two, and this one will be three. So let me just quickly change them. You see that all this is a paragraph, this is a paragraph. It will change to what I want. So this is how we can manipulate our HTML file with JavaScript. So let me save and refresh. As you can see that I've changed it successfully. So now let's say I want to change the background color of the first one. Let me just come in. Since I've already collected it here, I will simply continue to call that variable. So I want to change the background color for this. What I will now do is dot style. There's what we call dot style. If you want to manipulate the CSS, so this one dot style, then the name of what you want to make use of. Now we have different properties, like you can make use of the color, the background color, the width, the height. If you can remember all those things when we are doing CSS. Now we have what we call background color, background Now if you want to write it in css, we will write it just like this. Let me come here and write it, say background. I think there's always an icon in background color. Then we now write the color that we want. So if you remember that I said that JavaScript makes use of camel case. So if you want to write this one now in JavaScript, we will just write it together but with the camel case notation. So background color, then we can now give it the color that we want. So let's say I want red. So we can now put red. If I save and refresh, you see. I hope you can see my screen. So we can do the same for every other one. So let's say for this two, I just want to change the color. So let me just change it to orange. So if it is a single word, it will be lowercase all through. But if there are two words joined together, then you will make use of the camel case. So let me just save and let us see what we have done. So I hope you can see this. So I will like us to go through W3's go through the documentation that I gave to us, and we can also make use of W3 school. Then let me remind us something about this W3 school. I have said this earlier, but I just want to remind us. So if you have any issue, there's what we call the W3 school how to. There's what we call the W3 school learn how to. So if there is anything that you are trying to get, maybe you want to do navigation, anything, so you can just come here to see how it is being done. All you need to do is to copy the code. Just copy the code and it will work. So let me quickly do something for us. Now still on this DOM, let's say what we now have here is input. Let's say have input. So let me give it a name. And what I want to use for here is username. So then I have ID to be username as well. So let's say I have the submit button. Let me give it an ID of submit. So let me comment all these ones. So let me just make an age for here and give it an ID of display. So let's say we want to get information from our user. As you know, what we will do is first of all get them. So I'll make use of query selector all through. So username. So I want to make the other one to be password. We need a unique ID. I just copied and paste without changing it. I want it to be password. So I'm just using this as an example for us. So const username equals to document dot query selector. Since it is a function, we will call it by the name of this. You can use the single quotes or the double one, then followed by the notation, which is hash for this, then the name of that ID. Let me just quickly duplicate this. All I need is to change this to password. So I just want us to see one functionality of this. Now let me consult of log it so that you will see. So let me just refresh this. Sorry, I didn't add the submit here. And I would like to go to here also. So let us Let us inspect it. As you can see that it has brought out that element for us, so we can now manipulate it the way we want it. So what I want to do, I want to get the value of this. So yeah, let me just put value for this one. As you know that there is what we call the value attribute. So let me just type my name. So let me say this and let us see. So to get the value that a user enter here, we normally make use of dot va value. We have dot text content, dot value, and all those ones. So now let's say I want to get the value of what user type. So let me quickly duplicate it and also get for the submit. There's what we call add there's what we call event listener. It is just as the name is, it listens to events. So let's say whenever the user submits, I want it to do something for me. So since I've already done this one, I'll just take the value of this submit dot add event listener. So it is a function that takes two values. So it takes the event that you want to listen to. So we have different events. Now for the button, which is the submit button, we can make use of click, which means that whenever the user click, I want it to do something. We have different types of events that we can listen to. So we have the click. If you want to get everything, you can just go on your browser and Google JavaScript events. So it will bring out. So let's check for W3 school. So we have the on click one, we have the on blur, very good. So we have the on change, on click, on mouse over, on mouse out, on key down, on load. We have a lot. So you can still browse more on that. Now the next thing that it will take is what we call function. So we have talked about function. So this is more like the function declaration, which we call anonymous function. Anonymous function means function without name. So that is what we make use of here. So I can now call this username dot value. So let user1, this is equals to this. So it should store the value here. Then I want to display it a. So let me quickly grab the display as well. I can now say display dot text content equals to user1. Let me save and see. So let me just click submit. As you can see, it will display it here for me. So hope you can still see my screen.
Yes.
Yes, we can, ma.
All right. All right. So I want, though it is not good to display password, but just for practicing sake, let me say pwd. Let pwd one equals to password dot value. So let us always know that this will always take string, of course, and that is why I will quickly talk of one thing before we now move to array. So I want to make use of my template visual here. So since this is a variable, I can say welcome Jawan, your password is, so I can now put the pwd what I've gotten from that. So let me save and let us see what will happen now. So I can say done. So if I click on submit, it will just say welcome John. Your password is 123456. So this is what this will really be useful for us when we are doing the calculator thing. So let me just quickly change this to number. So instead of text, I will make use of type number instead of password. Let me just make use of number. So I will not want to change. Okay. Let me just quickly change the ID from one to. So this is how it will be like. And let's say I want to get it. Note I've changed the username to normal. I've changed the password to num2. So every username now should be num1. I hope there is no more username. Then on VS Code, you can use Ctrl F to find anything that you want to find. Then there's a way you can also do general search with VS Code as well. So let me just change this one to. So let's say, okay. So now, let us always note that anything that we get from the front end from this place, it will always be in string. So we can convert it using the plus symbol. So what I want to do here is to add these two together. Plus one so as to convert it. Now instead of plus, we can make use of the number function as well. So it will convert it to number. So let me just make use of this. Now before all of this, I want to console.log this so that I will know what I'm getting. Now number, let me just convert it here. The same thing to here. Number. So I want to inspect this. Don't forget that it is until I click on submit before it's the console.log. So it is console.log 2, and it will take this one too. And I'm sure if you check for this type of this one, it will be number. Let me quickly refresh this. So until I click before. Very good. Now, what if I have not converted this? Let's say, so let me refresh so that we will see. So as you can see that anything that you get from all these input form, it is a string. So if you want to perform any um mathematical or operation on it, you will need to first of all convert it to type number before it will work. So on click of this, let me close the console now. On click of this, I want you to do this for me. So since I've already converted it, I don't need that one again. So let me just save. So as you can see, it is giving me 5 here. So let us take note of this when we want to make use of our when we want to do the calculator assignment. Now, if you want to do a general search on this folder with VS Code, you will come here, then you now type for anything that you want. Let's say I want to see where the value is. So it will bring out the file. So if I click on it, it will bring out where it is. So that is how we can do general search with VS Code. That one is by the way. So let me quickly talk about these two functions, which is alert. So let me just comment this one out, which is alert and prompt. Now, for alert, it is a written function for us in JavaScript, which we can use to alert the user. So let's say I get the number now and I want to alert. So I can just say alert alert the sum is num1 plus num2 into s. So if I refresh, you will see that one in action. So let's enter 10 and then I enter 20. So by the time I click on submit, this is how alert work. So the sum is 30. So let's say I want to make use of prompt. Let me just comment all of these one out. So you can prompt a user to enter something. Prompt is a function. So let's say I want the user to enter a number. Let's just see how this works first. So let me refresh so that now as you can see that it is saying enter a number. So if I input 5 and I click on OK, now what this thing will do is it will give me the value. So let me just say let value 1 equals to prompt. So now let me console.log this value 1 so that we will see. I hope you can still see my screen.
Yes, we can.
All right. So if I say 4 and I click on OK, now let me check my console now so that I will see what is giving me there. As you can see that it is 4 and the type of this value, it will always be a string. As you can see that it is 4 in black. Now if I convert it to a number using plus and I save and I refresh, you will see that it will now change to blue. I don't want to start typing console.log type of. So let me duplicate this. So maybe I can now say alert the sum of the numbers are, then I can now type value 1 and value 2. So this is how you can prompt a user to enter value. So let me refresh. So let's say I type 10. 10 plus 20 is 30. I click on OK. It will prompt me to enter another number. So it will now add it together. It will tell me that the sum, sorry, I just made the mistake that I told us of because that thing it just concatenated this. It is saying it as a string. So that is why we are saying 10 here. So let me convert the two to. And another thing that I can do instead of doing it here is to do it here immediately. So I can just add plus or add the number function that I talked of, and plus can do it as well. So let me save and now okay. Enter first number, enter second number. So let me refresh and let us see. The first number is 10, second number is 20. So the sum of the numbers are 20. I'm what this thing is doing is displaying only the last number. I'm trying to see what I did wrong there. Okay, I did value 1 plus value 1. So that is why it's giving me that. So let me save and refresh. So after this, we'll move to array. Okay, then enter 20. Then it will now give me 30. So now let's move to array. So array is a way of storing more than one value inside our variable. As you know that what we can only do before now is just to store only a single value inside a variable, just like this. But with an array we can store more than one number inside a variable. So how we can declare an array is with this. Let's or we use it's either you use the let keyword or the const keyword. Then let array equals, then you can make use of this literal. Then anything that you want, you can put it inside there. Another way is to make use of this way. So it is the same way, but me I prefer the first way because it's simple and straightforward. So inside there I can store any data type that I want. I can store number, I can store boolean, I can store string. So let's say I want to store email of this person. So let me just say gmail at gmail.com. So I can store anything as much as I want. Now, if I want to get the values in this array, let us note that it will start counting from 0. Now this 20 will be 0, the next one will be 1, the next one will be 2, then the next one will be 3. So if we want to get the first value inside this array, all I need to do is to type the name of the array, then the position of the array. Let's say I want to get true. Now the position of these two will be 1 because it will start naming from 0. Position 0 is this, position 1 is this, position 2 is this, just like that. So since I want to get to, I will write 1 here. So let me console.log this so that we will see. Now let me refresh and now inspect. Please, if there is anyone you don't get, just quickly call me back. Do you understand this?
Yes.
Yes. So if I want to get this one too, this is 0, 1, 2, 3. So I'll just put 3 here to get it. That is how we get the values inside the array. Now there are some inbuilt functions whereby we can manipulate this our array, and I will like us to google mdn array. So inside here we will see different functions that we can perform on the array. So it is by the left side here. So the first one that I would like to talk about is the push function. So what push normally does is that it helps us to add more elements to our array, but it will add it at the back, like the last one on the list. So let us practicalize that. So now we can make use of anything here, but I've chosen it to be array one. So we have dot push. So since the function, you remember that we always call it with this. Now what we do is that any that you will come through to this mdn and check through all the functions that you can perform on it. So you can click on it and there's always a demo work here that you can always make use of to know how it works, because I will only be able to work on few of them before we now move to objects. So let's say I want to push another boolean value here. I'll just add false. So let me console.log this, and as well the new array, the array one, so that you will see it. Let me refresh. As you can see that it is giving me 5 here. This push will give you the position of the elements that you just push. So in case you want to make use of it, you can store it inside a variable and make use of it. Now as you can see that the new array is now this 22 ball gmail, then what I just pushed. So there is what we call on shift too. So if you go through the mdn documentation, you will see what on shift does. So on shift is to on like push, it will add it to the front of the array. So this is on shift. So as you can see, that is a method that had one or more elements to the beginning of the array. So and shift. Let's say I just want to add different colors. I want to add blue and I want to add white. And we can even add another array. So let me just save this and let us see the, as you can see that it has added this. So, so we can just play around with all of this. So as I said earlier, that we can add different types of data type. So I can still come here and put another array. Let's say I just want to add arrays of fruits. So let me see, orange. So we can have array of arrays. So if I refresh this one now, you see that now I have 8 elements inside there. And the other one, the last one is another array of three um elements inside it. Now how do we now get the value of this array that is inside the array? So what we are going to do first is to write the position of the array that we want to get. Now it is as position 7. So I will write 7 here. Now the next thing, let me just console.log this, so that, take note that I want this mango. So let me refresh. As you can see that it has brought out this. Then I will now look for the position of what I want inside that array. This one is position 0, position 1. So I want mango and this is it. So let me just save it. You see that it will now give me mango. Now if you want to remove elements from an array, there's what we call pop. I don't want to delete this. So I can say array, the name of the array, then dot the function that you want to perform on it, and that is all. So what this pop does is that it takes the last element from this array, it removes it completely, so you cannot get it again. So let me first of all console.log what array is here. then pop the last element, then you can now see the final value of our array. As you can see here, it is 4. The reason it is 4 is that I've commented out all these ones. So we are now dealing with our real um array that we created here. So we have only 4 values here, and as you can see, by the time I perform the pop, it now remains 3. So if it is this 20 that I don't want, if I want to remove from the starting position, we are going to make use of on shift. Sorry, for on shift is to add this thing to the array, while shift is to remove from the first this thing. So if you want to remove from position 0, it will be shift. So this is it. It is just like pop. So if I refresh, you can see that 20 is now out of it. So what if I want to get the length of this array 1? There's what we call does length as well, which will give me, so let me just add it here, dot length, which will give me the length of this array, which is 1 2 3 4, which is 4. So what we're expecting is 4. So in case we need it, now let's say I want to get the elements inside there one by one. um this is where we can make use of the for loop. So I can say for I equals to 1, we are declaring it. Now I want the I to be less than the length of the array. So this is where we can make use of the dot length property. So I plus plus, and all I need is console.log I for me. So since it is only one statement, I will not make use of the curly braces. I think I'm missing something here. Sorry, let me quickly get what I'm missing here. Okay, so I is less than array one dot less than I plus plus. Then what I'm actually trying to console is the value of the array. Sorry for that. Is the value of the array. So because this thing will replace the position of my array. So I can now get my value out. So let's quickly talk on what if I want to get the position of where my array is. I mean the particular po- um the particular position of a value inside the array. So this is how we do that. Let me comment this one out. Array one dot, and since it is a function, as let's say I want to get where I want to know what is as index 4. Okay, we only have up to 0, 1, 2, 3. We only have up to 3, so I want to know what is inside this place. I hope you can still see my screen.
Yes. Yes.
Alright. As you can see, it brings out what is at that particular place for me. So if we check, we will see that it is ball that is actually there. Let me just move it to the reason we are making use of it. So that is how we can make use of the art symbol. Then we have what we call find. So we have find in index, and we have find. So it takes what you actually want to find. So let's say I want to find the index of
Hello,
ball.
ma.
Okay,
Yeah, I think it's past 3 already. So maybe you can find the convenient time for us to stop.
all right. So let me just use. like 4 minutes to tidy up.
Okay.
So as you know that we have a lot of functions, so we can just come here and look for the one that we want to make use of. So before we finish this class, I would like to talk about the map, which help us to generate another array. So this is how find index is being used, and it will give you the index of that particular thing that you are looking for. So let's talk of map before we now move to objects. So if you want to make use of map, so you write map, then it takes the it takes a function, which is normally the arrow function that we make use of, and the first thing is the element and then the index. So since I don't need the index now, let me just type this. So it means for each of the elements inside this array. So let me just change everything to number now. For each of the elements inside this array, elements, I just want to add two. So let me console.log array. Now I need to put this inside a value. So as you can see, it will add two to each of them and bring it back. Now it will not tamper with my array. So even if I still console my array, it will still do the same thing. So let us try and check through the MDN and practicalize all the methods therein. So since my time is up now, I will not be able to talk on objects. So that one will be for next class. And this will bring us to the end of today's class. Don't let us forget our assignments were to build a simple calculator. Thanks so much for today's class.